What's up, guys? Welcome back to Michigan Muckraker. My name's Michelle. Today is the 29th of March, 2024, and it is officially the Sabbath of the Red Heifer. It began at sundown today, Friday, 29th of March, and it ends at nightfall on Saturday, 30th of March. And so we're going to get into what exactly that means. And as an outsider looking in, I will be crystal clear with you that I don't know everything about the prophecies, but I'm interested and I've done some research and I wanted to share that research with you guys because although I don't understand it, it's definitely going to change the world. It's a big deal for the three monolithic religions, which of course is Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. So I have a lot to share with you as per usual. I just want to say I'm sorry for my prolonged absence. I'm still not back full time. I'm going to sneak these videos in as I can. My mother-in-law is doing better, but she's not doing well. So still dealing with all of that. But let's jump in to this info. Now, I like to look at the root of the problem, and so I think that this is one of the roots for the problems of the world, honestly. And it's because of, holy sites. So the red heifer and the third temple in end time prophecy. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "This is a requirement of the law that the Lord has commanded. Tell the Israelites to bring you a red heifer without defect or blemish, and that has never been under a yoke. This will be a lasting ordinance both for Israelites and for the aliens living among them." Numbers 19:1 to 2:10. Throughout almost 1900 years of exile, the Jewish people yearned to return to Israel, build the third temple in Jerusalem, and restore the temple service. 3 times a day, observant Jews pray, "May the Holy Temple be rebuilt speedily and in our day." Although Jewish people have always lived in the Holy Land, after the Holocaust, the Jews began returning to Israel en masse. In 1948, the Jewish nation was prophetically reborn as the State of Israel, and ever since, Jews have been streaming back to the land from all four corners of the earth. Since 1967, there has been a movement in Israel to rebuild the Holy Temple. However, the main obstacle is that the Temple Mount is currently occupied by the Dome of the Rock. Just as the regathering of the Jewish people is fulfillment of Bible prophecy, so too is the building of the third Holy Temple. He will raise a banner for the nations and gather the exiles of Israel. He will assemble the scattered people of Judah from the four quarters of the earth. The glory of this present house will be greater than the glory of the former house, says the Lord Almighty. And in his place I will grant peace, declares the Lord Almighty. Today, many of the preparations for the third temple have already been completed, including the sacred worship vessels and priestly garments to be worn by the Levites in temple services. As well, over 500 young Jewish men descended from the tribe of Levi have been trained as temple priests to fulfill their duties of worship and sacrifice in the temple. But the temple service can't begin without the red heifer. What does a cow have to do with rebuilding a holy temple? How could a simple animal play a vital role in the success or failure of such a monumental event? God's word states that only the red heifer can restore the biblical purity needed to rebuild the temple. Then Eleazar, the priest, is to take some of its red heifer blood on his finger and sprinkle it 7 times towards the front of the tent of meeting. An unblemished, pure red heifer is the key ingredient to temple worship. The ashes of the red heifer in ritual purity. So, again, as an outsider looking in, I kind of see, and please forgive my ignorance, I must say. I don't know everything, and I just started looking into this, so I'm sorry if I get anything wrong. But again, just from what I observe, it seems that there are 3 different cultures with 3 different prophecies, and they're each kind of fulfilling their own part of the prophecy of this larger narrative. My dad and I talked about it, and he's like, well, if there are people that are trying to make the prophecy come true, then, isn't it just supposed to happen? But it's like, if it wasn't written, would it happen at all? So this is part of the grand plan of this age. And I personally think we are at the end of this age. And so that's why all of this is coming about now. But I think, again, that it's really important for us to understand that this will change the world, even though we might not be invested in these prophecies ourselves. And by the way, thank you guys very much for joining me. I hope that you are as interested as I am in this type of thing. From all the research I've done, the attack October 7th actually had to do with the red heifers, although mainstream news denies that claim. Um, some people say that they're trying to stop the sacrifice of the red heifers. So again, are they just trying to fulfill their part of the prophecy, knowingly or unknowingly? I mean, in a way, I feel like we're all kind of pieces on this grand chessboard that was created by God. There are players that are trying to manipulate things for sure, but ultimately, it's his story. According to the Temple Institute, the organization dedicated to preparing for the construction of the third temple in Jerusalem, these cleansing waters are necessary to ritually purify the Temple Mount area, the sacred vessels, and the entire, I should have looked into how to say that, Levitical priesthood that are all being prepared for service today. The waters of sanctification were also sprinkled onto all those who were impure, and many were first purified in this process before entering the courts of the temple. You must keep the Israelites separate from things that make them unclean, so they will not die in their uncleanliness for defiling my dwelling place, which is among them. Many conditions may cause ritual impurity or defilement, but one of the most severe comes from exposure to death. Let's keep going. The mystery of the red heifer. The rabbis consider the red heifer one of the greatest mysteries of the Torah. Even they wonder how it's possible that the ashes of the sacrificial animal can purify from sin and defilement. Furthermore, in an apparent paradox, these same ashes that purified also made anyone involved in the red heifer preparations, from the person who gathered the ashes to the person who sprinkled the water, unclean until evening. The commandment regarding the red heifer is such a mystery that the rabbis place it in the category of chukim, divine decrees that cannot be understood by our limited human understanding. Kosher and dietary laws also fit into this category. Some Jewish sages believe the ordinance of the red heifer to be connected to the sin of the golden calf. The red heifer is believed to serve in some way and as an atonement for the terrible consequences of the Israelites worshiping the golden calf when they were brought out of Egypt. Ultimately, however, understanding the reasons behind the red heifer and the mechanism of this purification process is beyond our intellectual capacity. Nevertheless, there are Orthodox Jews who are willing to humble themselves and be obedient in performing it because they love and fear God. Then he took the book of the covenant and read it to the people. They responded, "We will do everything the Lord has said. We will obey." Finding the red heifer. So, in order for the cow to qualify as a red heifer for this holy purpose of purification, it must meet the following requirements, as outlined in Numbers 19 and also in the writings of the oral tradition of the Talmud. The red heifer must be absolutely perfect in its redness. Even 2 hairs of any other color will disqualify it. Even its hooves must be red. And we're about to read in one of these articles that 5 actually were found. Now, I think only 1 has to be sacrificed, but we're going to get into it. It was to be 3 or 4 years old, and they came of age in 2024. Although older animals could be used, younger could not. It must be free of any kind of internal or external defect or blemish. It must not have been used for any type of physical labor or never have been placed under a yoke, not even once. Only an animal that meets these requirements may be used to provide the ashes of the purification process. Now, coming over here, massive altar for red heifer sacrifice constructed in Israel. Since the time of Moses, only 9 red heifers have been sacrificed. So again, even if you aren't invested in these prophecies, there are people that are and that are actively trying to bring forth what was in Revelations, the third temple, and then the Antichrist, from my understanding, takes over that third temple. So again, from my understanding, Christians would have an active interest in not allowing this to go through, but at the same time, I mean, it's written down once again, so can we stop it? Like, that's my question. Now, a massive altar for the 10th red heifer sacrifice has been built in Israel, and there is a tremendous amount of speculation that it could happen soon. Now, I first heard from Glenn Beck in March, the middle of March, so just a couple weeks ago, that it was actually going to be tonight. And then I just found another piece of proof of that. So, again, they have all the way till April 22nd, I believe, is the end of Passover for them. But from what I hear, it's happening tonight. And so, will there be some kind of event that goes on? Are the Muslims going to try to stop the sacrifice from happening? It's unfortunate because I mean, I'm anti-war, and so of course I don't like that people are killing each other. But this is what seems to be going on over there. In September 2022, 5 red heifers were flown from the state of Texas on the land of Israel. Since that time, one of them has been disqualified, but the other 4 continue to be candidates for a red heifer sacrifice. As I discussed last week, there was a practice run of the purification ceremony in 2023. But an official ceremony must be conducted before the heifers get too old to be used for the sacrifice. So will a red heifer be sacrificed in Israel in 2024? And this came out the 21st, so just a week ago. According to CBS News, a massive altar has already been constructed. I was absolutely floored when I first saw that. A red heifer sacrifice would need to happen on the Mount of Olives, and the land where the sacrifice would take place is owned by Rabbi Mamo. According to those working on the project, the ceremony of the red heifer needs to be performed on the Mount of Olives and in a place that would have looked directly into where the temple stood. The land directly east of Temple Mount, purchased 12 years ago, meets both of those standards. Rabbi Mamo owns that land on the Mount of Olives. He is with Jerusalem, a group that preserves Israel's history, and works to educate future generations. Concerning the specifics of the land, he told CBN News it had to be exactly at the front of the place that the priests that made the ceremony can see the holy of the holy place. But the clock is ticking. If they get too old, they will no longer qualify. During a recent public appearance, Mamo explained that we are very close to the 3rd year of these cows. If there isn't any mathematicians here, so you can understand that we are very close to the 3rd year of these cows, reveals Mamo, which means that with the help of God, we will get permission from God and from the people to make the ceremony, and then we can be pure. Recently, there has been a lot of buzz that we could actually see a red heifer sacrifice very soon. Last month, All Israel News reported that the Temple Institute wants to conduct a sacrifice before Passover 2024. As of now, 4 of the heifers remain blemish-free. This year, the Jewish people celebrate Passover on April 22nd, so there's where I got the April 22nd. During a recent broadcast, Glenn Beck also discussed the possibility that the red heifer sacrifice could happen in the very near future. Come down here. So purifying them so they can actually go up, and even if there's no temple, they can pray as if there were in the temple. They're going to do this Passover weekend, so Easter weekend. So that's from Glenn Beck. And again, from my understanding, he's a Jew, and so you would think he would know what day. Now, this post had to be translated, and it came out 26th of March, so just a few days ago. Extremist temple groups hold a special conference to prepare for the ritual slaughter of the red cow on Wednesday. The so-called Temple Institute will hold a conference tomorrow, Wednesday, the 27th of March, 2024, to discuss religious preparations for the ritual slaughter of the red cow, which aims to purify itself from the impurity of the dead in order to bypass the ban imposed by the chief rabbinate of the occupying state on storming the blessed, not translated, due to the lack of purity condition. Extremist temple groups are counting on the fact that holding a ritual of purification with the red heifer could open the way for hundreds of thousands of religious Jews to storm I just looked into this too, Aqsa Mosque, who abstain from doing so today in compliance with the official rabbinical ban. This, if it happens, would actually open the way to doubling the dangers facing Al-Aqsa and doubling the numbers of those invading and enforcing rituals there. The conference will be held in the Shiloh settlement north of Ramallah, where the 5 cows are located, which were bred with genetic engineering in the American state of Texas and brought to Palestine in the month of 2022, and are subject to special care there and around the clock monitoring. So there's another thing. I didn't even know this. Genetic engineering. So they created these cows specifically for this purpose to fulfill the prophecy. So again, if the prophecy wasn't written down, would any of this be happening? A number of rabbis will speak at the conference, calling for the ritual to be performed after the 5 cows have reached the minimum legal age that allows the purification process to be carried out, which is 2 years and 2 months, as the age of the cows is stipulated to be not less than this amount, and they may be older. February 2024, during the war, the Temple Institute published an announcement requesting volunteer priests to train them in the ritual of purification with the red cow, and set special conditions for the volunteers. It is assumed that this process will take place on a piece of land that these groups have previously seized for this purpose on the Mount of Olives, opposite Al-Aqsa. It is noteworthy that the date recorded in the sacred religious texts of these groups for the slaughtering the cow and purifying itself with its ashes is the 2nd day of the Hebrew month of Nisan, which this year falls on 4/10. So there's another date. It might not be tonight. It might be 4/10, it might be 4/22. But either way, along with the eclipse and then CERN starting up again on the 8th, we have a lot going on between now and the 22nd. And the bottom line is the stars are aligning in a certain way, and some people believe in magic, and so they do these certain rituals on these very powerful days and weekends, this weekend in particular. So very possible it could be happening right now. Although the temple groups have not yet published official calls to hold a ritual of purification with the red cow, this conference comes within the framework of several preliminary steps that have been monitored that indicate the seriousness of preparing for this ritual, whether on the day of, I'm not even going to try, or at any time after it. So I thought that was interesting. Give you a little bit more information. And then this video is only 1 minute and 58 seconds, but it kind of gives a nice summary too of all of the different steps that had to be taken.
What is the red heifer?
Yo, this is wild. It's written for the temple to be rebuilt. That ushers in the end times. All the tools that they use within the temple need to be cleansed. In order to do that, they sacrifice a red heifer. There's only been 9 red heifers ever sacrificed. The last red heifer to have been sacrificed was 2,000 years ago. A cattle rancher in Texas got invited with these rabbis to go look for red heifer. They found 5. The process was insane. They can never have been.
They created 5.
Yoked. No one could have leaned on them. That's why it's been 2,000 years. They determined we finally found them. These 5 heifers are in Israel right now being protected and guarded. They have 9 months to sacrifice this red heifer because they can't be older than 3 years old. He's basically saying if this happens, we're now in the trajectory of this end times prophecy stuff. What's crazy too, with each sacrifice, they always mix the ashes of the previous red heifers. When they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, they also found a jar that had the previous 9 red heifers' ashes in it.
Weird.
Dating back to Moses. We have an update on the red heifer. They have built the altar on the Mount of Olives and hummus. One of the major reasons that they attacked Israel in October was because of the red heifers, because the Dome of the Rock sits on the Temple Mount right now. And by doing this sacrifice of the red heifers, it is an all-out threat of being we're going to get rid of the Dome of the Rock and rebuild the temple. The Muslims were just no way.
It's a whole different narrative.
What are the potential implications of this being enacted?
The Dome of the Rock is completely sacred to the Muslim faith.
Yep.
And if that's destroyed, you will not only have every Muslim nation, you'll have every Muslim in the world
Well, it'll be like the Battle of Armageddon, which talks about all the nations rising up against Israel. It's crazy that they literally have a sacrifice altar built, and they said it'll happen
recently built.
By the time this comes out, they could have already done it, because they said it'll happen any day between now and Passover, which is in the end of April. So I say all that just to be like, yo, just be ready for anything.
Be ready for anything. And, I say this a lot. It's a crazy time to be alive. I'm thankful, but, it's going to be challenging coming up. So thank you guys for joining me, by the way. Brent, hi from Indiana. What's up? Thank you for hanging out. And over on YouTube, appreciate you guys being here. So just more information thrown at you about this red heifer prophecy. Many people today are unaware of the significance of the red heifer in both Judaism and Christianity. This symbol of purification is deeply rooted in Scripture, including the book of Numbers, where God instructs Moses and Aaron about the ritual purification involving a red heifer. This is why the work of American farmer Byron Stinson, an evangelical Christian from Texas, and Rabbi Mamo, an official from the Temple Institute in Jerusalem, Israel, is so important. Speaking at the 2024 National Gathering for the Prayer and Repentance in Washington, D.C., the two shared the importance of the red heifer in the ceremony that must take place for the ritual sacrifice and worship to resume in the eventual Third Temple. Now, again, I didn't hear anything about Hamas attack on October 7th being about the red heifers until recently when I started looking into this stuff. So it's not something you're going to see on your mainstream narrative. Finding these unique cattle was no small feat. Again, I really wish I would have saw that line in that translated script. I would have looked more into how they came to find these red heifers, because if they were actually genetically modified, then it's like cheating, discussing this symbol. But again, is it just it was meant to be this way? Obviously, it just must have been meant to be. Discussing this symbol of great importance to the Jewish and Christian communities, Rabbi Mamo, and I hope I'm saying that right, obviously I could be wrong, explained that the heifer must be in its third year of life to be used in the ceremony. The ashes of the red heifer are used as uniquely to purify. In Judaism, the red heifer's ashes played a critical role in the process of ritual purity, particularly for those involved in temple services. For Christians, the bovine holds a slightly different meaning, as the red heifer is often seen as the prefiguration of Christ's sacrificial atonement. The red heifer's sin-cleansing symbolism aligns the redemptive power of Jesus' blood. Although not as explicitly emphasized in the New Testament, the red heifer serves as a symbolic link between the Old and New Covenants, reflecting themes of purification, sacrifice, and spiritual cleansing in both religious traditions. I mean, what do you guys think about sacrificing animals in 2024 in general? It seems pretty crazy that we're here again. Additionally, the red heifer plays an important role, part of Christian history. When the Third Temple is restored and sacrifices resume, it is because a red heifer without blemish has been found and allowed the resumption of the temple services. This is the qualified marker of the end times and the eventual rise to power of the Antichrist, a precursor to the return of Jesus Christ. So I guess maybe that's why Christians might want this, because sure, the Antichrist comes first, but then you get Jesus coming back. As Charisma News reported, the spokesman for the military wing of Hamas revealed that the red heifers were targets in the October 7th massacre that saw over 1,200 Israelis murdered. We look back 100 days to remember the educated, the complicit, and the incapacitated among the world powers governed by the laws of the jungle, reminding them of an aggression that reached its peak against our path, Al-Quds and Al-Aqsa, with the start of its actual temporal and spatial division, and the bringing of red cows as an application of a detestable religious myth designed for aggression against the feelings of an entire nation in the heart of its Arab identity. The path of its prophet, the night journey and ascension to heaven, read Abadiah. Christ became the only necessary the only necessary sacrifice for today. No need to kill animals. Yes, I don't really like that they're doing this. And again, I can't say that I know all about Christ's sacrifice, although I started reading the Bible. I started with Isaiah, and it's really beautifully written, and it seems very timeless to me, because what happened then, it was talking about stuff that happened already, but it could apply to today. So like perhaps we kind of just repeat ourselves over and over, and so that's why the Bible is timeless. Is like we did it then and now we're doing it again. Let's see. We will see the Antichrist next, right? I mean, in theory, I think that the person that actually sacrifices the cow is the Messiah. Don't quote me on that. I read something in one of these articles that said that. So then that means that the Jewish Messiah would be revealed. I watched Left Behind, the new one. I thought it was really good. Now, I don't know about the rapture. I heard, it's not actually in the Bible. But the whole United Nations being involved, to me, makes sense. If you guys have been here any length of time, the United Nations and the World Economic Forum and their Agenda 2030 is like the plan to take over the world. So, there's a lot going on with all that. Prince William. So you think Prince William will be the next king? A genetically modified cow wouldn't be the real thing, would it? Now that's the thing. I don't know. The 2024, would there be any other way? Is this how it was meant to be? And why are the Jews so important? I don't know. That's another thing that I question, because from my understanding, the Jews are the chosen ones, the chosen people, God's chosen people, and that he made a promise to them is what they think. And then the Christians say that promise was fulfilled and a new promise came forth, and that is that we are all cleansed because of Jesus Christ dying on the cross. So there's a conflict there. I mean, obviously there's a conflict with all three of the monolithic religions. And so very complex stuff. I find it, again, interesting simply because this is going to change the world. So we need to know about it. Yeah, I don't know who it will be. I personally think it will be nobody that we know of. It's going to be somebody that comes out of nowhere. I mean, allegedly everybody has to love the Antichrist and be tricked by him. And so I don't think that most people would be tricked by Prince William. So, but it could all be symbolism, and we could be reading the prophecies all wrong and screwing it all up. Since the Dome of the Rock sits atop where many believe the Holy of Holies to be on the Temple Mount, many Muslims fear that the mosque will be destroyed. If this were the case, which Rabbi Mamo says they are not trying to do, it would embroil the entire world in mass protests and violence from the followers of Islam. To be clear, no one knows how the Lord will orchestrate these events to unfold, only that they will unfold as biblical prophecy declares. In the meantime, Christians can continue praying for the peace of Israel in these volatile days and for wisdom, discernment, and strength to navigate the end times. Amen. A massive altar prepared for the red heifer sacrifice ritual in Jerusalem just came out today. As Israel imports cows from Texas to fulfill ancient biblical prophecy, reports emerge of a massive altar being prepared in Jerusalem. This ancient ritual, dating back to the time of Moses and steeped in religious significance, has captured the attention of observers worldwide. This red heifer, the perfectly red heifer, is required for the sacrifice in the third temple in Jerusalem. The construction of this temple is a fervent desire for some radical Jewish groups who believe it will lead to the arrival of the Messiah. However, the proposed location for this temple is also home of the mosque on the Dome of the Rock. Speculation regarding the timing of the sacrifice has intensified in recent weeks, with suggestions that it could coincide with the upcoming Passover celebrations. Amidst whispers of potential dates and meticulous preparations, Israel braces for the repercussions of this historic event. Yet, against the backdrop of religious fervor and ancient tradition, geopolitical tensions loom large. Hamas has openly acknowledged the symbolic significance of the red heifers, citing them as a catalyst for the hostilities against Israel. The prospect of their sacrifice threatens to exacerbate existing tensions, raising concerns over potential unrest and international ramifications. So, lots of warnings about ramifications of this. This is what I just found actually today, the Sabbath of the Red Heifer, saying that Friday, 29th of March, and ends Saturday, the 30th. So, maybe it's today, maybe it's not. Let's see. We're going to listen really quick and see what Glenn Beck has to say. Revelations 2:9 and 3:9. I will have to read it. I have I got a really nice Bible, and it's an archaeology Bible. So not only am I reading it, but I get to an explanation of historical reference, which has been really helpful for me to try to understand, what I'm reading. But yes, I will look those up. I appreciate you sharing them.
And it wasn't discussed because the mainstream media has no idea what this even means. But at the 100-day mark of the war in Israel, October 7th, the military spokesman for Hamas gave a televised speech about the Hamas efforts, as well as a reminder of the purpose of the war. Now, this was translated into English by the Palestinian Chronicle, which, gosh, I must have missed this issue of it. And it just came to my attention. But I want you to listen carefully to what this guy said. Quote, "We look back 100 days to remember the educated, the complicit, the incapacitated among the world powers governed by the law of the jungle, reminding them of an aggression that reached its peak against our path, Al-Quds and Al-Aqsa." Al-Quds is the Muslim name for Jerusalem, and Al-Aqsa is the mosque that is on top of the Temple Mount. Reminding them of an aggression that reached its peak against, translating in Jerusalem, and the Temple Mount, with the start of its actual temporal and spatial division. What? They started to reach peak at the start of the Jews' actual temporal and spatial division, and, quoting, "the bringing of red cows as an application of a detestable religious myth designed for aggression against the feelings of an entire nation in the heart of its Arab identity, and the path of its prophet and the ascension into heaven." What did you get out of that, Stu? What the temporal and spatial division? What's that? That sounds kind of mystical, doesn't it?
It does sound mystical.
This is all mystical to me.
And the bringing of red cows as an application of a detestable religious myth. Well, we should look in to what that is. The bringing of red cows as part of a detestable myth. Okay.
Okay, Glenn.
Red heifers are the detestable religious myth, according to the leader of Hamas.
Well, I think it's sacrificing them, right? I mean,
a red heifer in the Old Testament, to be sacrificed, has to have no more than 2 black or white hairs, and they check them. I mean, I think there's probably, I'm guessing there's a rabbi squad that goes out and they look and they check the heifer. It has to be unblemished, all red hair. And that's a 1 in 50,000 chance that your red heifer is going to be born like that. And it cannot have more than 2 black or white hairs. even before having their ears tagged, a common practice with livestock that would disqualify them for ceremonial use.
Okay, hold on. I just found this really quick. I'm going to share this. Jewish activists launched crowdfunding appeal to breed perfect red heifer. Group dedicated to fulfilling biblical prophecy by building a third temple look for a scientific solution to propagate holy cow with key role in messianic rituals. So there you go. I mean, science will be the new religion in this one world government, one world currency, which, by the way, they're working very hard on those central bank digital currencies. Swift is a new one that just came out, and within 12 to 24 months, everything will be connected. It's one of the base software. So a lot going on there. But scientific solution, imagine that. A Jewish activist group dedicated to the controversial project of a building of the third temple has launched a crowdfunding appeal to scientifically breed the perfect red heifer. So there you go. Scientism. The creation of a third temple as a permanent house in which God will reside was prophesied by Ezekiel, and most Orthodox Jewish authorities regard it something that will be a miraculous event. This was all the way back in 2015, 8 years old. A minority, however, believe that humans can build the temple. Now, here's another question that my husband and I bounce off each other. Does the temple mean an actual physical temple, or does it mean this temple? Like, you know, I don't know. Brent says, I'm from Michigan. I love it up there. Yeah, I love Michigan. I don't like what's going on in Michigan. We have a lot of resources, and so the globalists have their eye on us and our resources, which is another question, sideline really quick, about the new nuclear plant that just is starting back up. That's on Lake Michigan. What do you guys think of that? I am unfamiliar with nuclear energy, rather. I've heard both good and bad, but I don't have a clear stance. So I don't know if they would start it back up if it was actually a threat to Lake Michigan, because that's one of the resources that the globalists want. Water wars are coming, unfortunately. And so Michigan being filled with water, they want it to remain pristine for themselves. That's why nuclear warfare won't happen, because this whole thing is about resources, and nuclear warfare would destroy the resources. So that's not going to happen. They would rather just destroy us, the people that are taking their resources and their mind, not the resources themselves. So just a question thrown out there. What do you guys think? Is it dangerous, or do you a threat to our resources, or do you think that it's good, clean energy, and that we should, lean more into it? But I love Michigan. I moved back because I think the people of Michigan are very unique, friendly, and yet not, what's the word? Too nosy. Anyway, I'm glad to be back, but we definitely have a battle here. One of the big battlefronts of this war that we're in is in Michigan. So, and we have a lot of warriors that are fighting for God and country. So I'm very pleased with that. And the more pressure that's put on a state or a people, the more diamonds will pop out. And I've been seeing that over the last year. It's been a really amazing year for that kind of stuff, to see people rising, a bunch of Davids rising up against Goliath, Goshen here. But I have faith that we are going to beat the monster back here, and we'll be one of the first to do it, to show the country how it's done. Gotta have faith, right? An obstacle for the latter group is the belief that because the world is impure, individuals wishing to ascend to the temple must be cleansed with water mixed with the ashes of a pure red heifer that has been ritually sacrificed. For decades, Jews subscribing to this belief have been engaged in a painstaking and unsuccessful search for the miraculous red cow, known in Hebrew as the para aduma. The most recent candidate has suggested and was suggested and discounted last year. However, the Jerusalem-based Temple Institute has announced its plans to breed its own red heifer using surrogacy techniques. The plans have sparked friction with local Israeli agricultural authorities and U.S.-based investors in a business that imports red Angus embryos to raise for meat, after the activists appeared to have attached themselves to the import business. The anti-propagandist, nuclear energy has risks, horrific risks, but yes, it is clean energy. Yeah, I mean, the problem is you have to trust people to run the site correctly. And in 2024, can we do that? Not to get too far in the weeds with the Boeing stuff, because I think that the Boeing stuff is actually intentional sabotage. I did a Substack article, and if the elitists, the self-anointed pricks, don't want us to fly, and they want us to choose not to fly, how would you go about doing that? You would make it as inconvenient as possible, which we've seen in the last 4 years. It's very inconvenient to fly, not just because of TSA, but now because of shortages, constant rescheduling, and all that other stuff. But you would make it unsafe. And so what you're seeing is potential intentional sabotage to make it so that we don't want to fly because it's unsafe to fly. And so then they get their way. We'll choose not to fly. But anyway, I get on another tangent. The Temple Institute was founded in 1987 by Rabbi Ariel and has recreated artifacts for rituals required in a new temple, of which the red heifer would be the most ambitious. It has been active in encouraging its supporters to visit the Temple Mount, known to Muslims as the Noble Sanctuary, causing friction at the site. So this is all the way back in 2015. How little do I know? There's so many different battlefronts, both spiritual and material. It's impossible to keep hold of them all. But this, again, I think is a root. Yeah, Chernobyl, communists failed there, and then a lot of safety measures came out of that failure, to be fair. But yes, communists, they don't have any incentive to do it correctly and do it well. It's just the way we work, man. We want to be able to level up, right? And to work for things and to feel like we're not stuck in the same place at all times. In communism, you're just stuck. The cow is mentioned in Numbers and other religious texts and has significant to strands of both Messianic Christianity and Judaism. Jewish religious teaching holds that between the time of Moses until the destruction of the Second Temple, only 9 perfect red heifers were discovered. The 10th, according to the Jewish philosopher, whose writings in this case the group adheres to, will herald the coming of the Messiah. The cow's ashes, burned with fragrant wood and scarlet wool, are used to produce Nida, purifying water that allows people access to the temple's most sacred places. For Messianic Christians, the red cow is also regarded as a precursor to the building of the Third Temple, an act itself that would herald the end times. Again, rebuilding the Third Temple, is that possibly here, or is it physical? Now, maybe with humans actually fulfilling the prophecies themselves, it's an actual physical temple, because that's what humans like to do. In recent years, the Temple Institute has twice announced the discovery of the perfect red cow as part of a more conventional search, only to reverse its view. Make no mistake, this project is nothing less than the first stage of the reintroduction of the biblical purity to the world, said Rabbi Richman. In a video this month to launch the initiative, which has already raised $22,000 in 12 days, Rabbi Richman, head of the Temple Institute's International Division, insisted, make no mistake, this project, I just read that, sorry. For 2,000 years, we've been mourning for the destruction of the Holy Temple, but the future is in our hands. And I'm not going to get into all this today, but there's a lot to be said about just the founding of Israel itself. The Rothschilds and the Rockefellers were involved. And so were they themselves trying to fulfill prophecy. To that end, the Institute announced in its publicity material it had launched a scheme to import frozen red Angus embryos to a cattle ranch in Israel's Negev. All of which, it appears, is news to some of those in the company investing in a scheme to import the embryos from Texas, in which, thus far, has produced only male offspring. For a while, cattle rancher Tani has reportedly done a deal with the Institute to allow access to the Red Angus project. Others involved appear to have been caught angrily unawares, with some U.S. donors to the Red Angus meat-raising project threatening to withdraw. The Temple Institute didn't bring over any embryos. We did everything without any thought of the temple. Moskowitz, the head of research and development at Negev Regional Council, told the Israeli newspaper. The members of the United States saw that and were very, very insulted. I tried to bring them together, but it didn't work out. We probably won't cooperate with them. Religious experts, too, have pointed out a more esoteric and perhaps insoluble problem with the Institute's plan to make their own red heifer. Ritual requires that the priest who sacrifices the heifer be ritually pure as well. Well, they're not lacking it. When were the Dead Sea Scrolls found? Let's see what this says. Oh, okay. Between 1946 and 1956. So, I thought that the red heifer ashes were found with the Dead Sea Scrolls. I guess maybe I should try that. Let's see. Red heifer ashes, Dead Sea Scrolls. Well, there you go. The Temple Institute themselves. The original ashes. Will it load? Here we go. Earlier, it was mentioned that in the days of the Holy Temple, the priest who was to burn needed. Okay. Oh, this is not saying that they were found. There we go. Yeah, I'll have to do some more research for you guys, and I will, when I find more, if I find any more, then I will share with you, because, again, this is interesting. We need to know. Only male offspring. Right, so it has to be, yeah, it has to be a heifer. Let's see, nothing wrong with what we have. It's the nuclear plant in Monroe. It had problems and they shut it down in the 1980s or so. Yeah, I mean, I thought that the nuclear plant on Lake Michigan was only shut down in 2022 because of regulations, which again, people are like, okay, they were regulating it then and shut it down. Now, why is it okay? Are they starting to see perhaps that wind and solar is not going to work? I doubt it. I don't think they ever really thought it would work for the grand scale that we have now. They think it's going to work for the depopulated version of their plans. Historic Jewish temple is located stone's throw away from the Dome of the Rock. Okay, this would probably say most of the same. Groundbreaking new research argues that the Dome of the Rock Islamic shrine is not the location of the historic Jewish temple. So, I mean, we're a bunch of confused humans, to be fair, but there are certain groups of people, there's a lot of information, let's say, in the Vatican that we aren't privy to. And so there are scholars that research these things. And so they get to talk amongst themselves and get to know what's going on. And so I'm sure that there are a group of people that it's been passed down generation by generation or something, that they know where the temple is and what day the red heifer is supposed to be sacrificed. Let's see. The other major factor that led Widener to believe this was precisely where the temple was located in the first place was because of Chronicles 3:1 reveals that Solomon started building a temple on Mount Moriah on the threshing floor. And another thing is, Mount Hermon, I believe it is, has United Nations base on it. over there. It's like the highest point in Israel, and that's supposedly where the entrance to hell is. That's another thing that I'm going to look into and share that information with you guys, because it seems so far-fetched, but we kind of live in a world where magic is real, that there are wizards and witches and sorcerers that are doing spells, and we live in a fantasy book. It kind of feels like that. Like, I read The Wheel of Time, which there is a TV show on Amazon. I do not recommend. I recommend just reading the book or listening to the audiobook. But a lot of this reminds me of that series because there was the Dragon Reborn, which is, I think, kind of like Christ, perhaps. But there are prophecies about the Dragon Reborn from all these different cultures. And again, they, based on their culture and what their prophecy said, they responded in certain ways, and thus it fulfilled all of the prophecies from all the cultures in the end for the Dragon Reborn. So I know that's just a fantasy book, but I think a lot can be found truth-wise in those books. Play a monopoly with our resources, take fuel and coal away from us, give us 100% resource and control to NGOs so she can make Michigan like California. I know. And then there's let's see, I'll bring it up right now. There's this interview that you guys should watch. It's with Michael Yon and Sean Ryan. And in it, Michael Yon has been down to the Darien Gap like 50 times, he said.
Stop training people.
And he brought up the point that China right now in the Darien Gap, I know I'm getting off on a side tangent, but it is what it is. Right now, China in the Darien Gap is building a bridge big enough for tanks to go over the Darien Gap. And there's a port there, it's Panama. It is a key to the United States of America so that people can get through South America or through Mexico and come up into America. And he brought up Detroit and how the World Economic Forum has a headquarters in Detroit, and how the One Belt, One Road initiative is absolutely connected all the way from now the Darien Gap all the way up to Detroit. It's a pipeline. And I did one video on migrants being necessary for the Sustainable Development Goals by the IOM, which is an international organization of migrants or something like that. And so there's a lot going on there, planning all kinds of ways. There's just a bunch of anointed people that want to change the world in their image or something. It's crazy. But if I could, let's see.
Well, that last year, I went, I was down there at the Darien Gap at the edge, looking at the bridge. I go down there all the time because I sensed that they were going to open it up. But there was nothing in the Panamanian news that I was able to find, or anybody was able to find. But I kept expecting they were going to open something up. So almost every time I would go to the Darien Gap, I would go to the end of the highway and look for just mud tracks or anything. And sure enough, I went down there and suddenly there's a bunch of mud. And so I followed this little thing, and I'm like, hey, here it is. They're building a bridge. Whipped out the droned it, and said, this is it. And so I went back up to Panama City and was talking to some people in the government and whatnot. And I was like, look, who's building that bridge? Who's funding it? Nobody seems to know. They're like, there's no bridge being built there. I said, look at the mud on my boots. I was just there like 8 hours ago.
Do you have video of this?
Oh, yeah, I've got tons of video.
Can we put it up here right now?
Absolutely.
All right.
And then real quick, Sean Ryan, both of these guys are prior special forces. And Michael Yon, he's a bad dude. Like, he has been working with the tribes down there, and there's tons of robbery, and he goes into it. It's not a safe place, the Darien Gap. It's awful for most of the migrants. And so I do want to preface that a lot of these people, they are being used as pawns by these international groups, being flooded in. And a lot of people are, they're dealing with sexual assault and robbery and all kinds of murder. All kinds of stuff is going on down there. So they are leaving their countries that we are bombing. And so it's so complicated. It's so complex. But I highly recommend you check this out. I just really wish I could have found where he talks about Detroit, because and how the United Nations is pushing all of this. Another one is Brett Weinstein. He's on Jordan Peterson. He went down to the Darien Gap with Michael Yon. And so these guys are coming back and they're explaining that there are two different migrations happening. And the Chinese migration is completely different than the other migration. You can go into the camps for all of the other people, but the Chinese camp you cannot go into. So there's something going on down there. And I know I got off tangent from the red heifers, but I don't even know how I did. Resources and NGOs. You talked about NGOs. That's how I got on a tangent. Yes, the NGOs want to control the resources. They want to inventory and control every resource on this plane of existence. And that is what and that includes human beings. So this migrant push is part of that. Real Israel is people. God called Jacob Israel and his descendants. So Jacob had 12 sons. Judah was only 1/12 of Israel. They don't see it that way. Yeah. And that's what's complicated with all this, is that how do you change people's mindset? You know, I don't think you can. I don't know how this ends. Although if I read Revelations, maybe I'll get an idea, right? I have this other video. We're going to watch a few minutes of it. I haven't seen it, but this guy's going to break it down. Oh, but first I got to actually share this tab instead. Here we go.
As accurate and as fast as I possibly can. The red heifers are in Israel and they are about to be sacrificed. We've talked about this on my station probably 2 years ago, and we talked about how the red heifers were here and they're about to get sacrificed. However, the Jews believe that the Messiah is going to sacrifice the red heifer. So whoever they believe the Messiah is going to be revealed. You do understand what I'm telling you? This is the biggest biblical prophecy you could possibly have on the return of Yeshua. I don't think you understand it. Too many Christians probably don't even know what I'm talking about because too many of us don't learn in spirit and truth. Glory be to God. He led me to a ministry. He led me to a bishop that teaches the mysteries and secrets of the kingdom of God. Because we can talk about things like this. Do you understand that the Jews may think that they need to do this in the physical? But we need to understand it as the true Jews in the spirit. Romans 2:29, we are Jews inwardly in Christ. Hallelujah. Galatians 3:28, there's no longer Jew nor Gentile, but we are all one in Christ. We as Christians, we have to understand things like this spiritually, which is why we need to get back to spirit and truth what the early church fathers taught, because when we don't understand things like this. We understand things like Christmas and Easter. We have to get back to spiritual truth. Glory be to the Lord Jesus Christ. So understand this, because the Jews use ashes from the red heifer, mix with pula siloam to purify, for purification. So if they believe that they're about to sacrifice a red heifer, they believe that purification is about to happen. Do you get what I'm saying? So if they believe that in the physical, we have to understand that it's about to happen in the spiritual. First the natural, then the spiritual. Glory be to the Lord. You have to understand there has not been a red heifer found nor sacrificed in the last 2,000 years.
Right, 2,000 years. That's what's crazy.
Now all of a sudden, there's red heifers in Israel. You understand how hard it is to get a red heifer without spot or blemish?
Not when you genetically engineer that thing.
What does it say the Lord's coming back for? A bride without spot, wrinkle, or blemish. Understand, people, what's going on here. Let's play a little video real quick. You guys get a little more insight on what I'm saying.
According to Mosaic law.
Okay. All right. I'll leave this. I will put all of the stuff that I've discussed in a Substack article. And I will keep my eye out on it. I have one more article I'm going to share with you guys. But this is some heavy stuff, isn't it? And everything that's going on. I don't know if you guys have seen with Candace Owens. Now, I have to be perfectly honest with you. I like Candace Owens. I think that her journey makes sense to me. We are the same age, and a lot of the things, her progression seems very similar to mine in a lot of ways. And so I respect her. I think she does a really good job at interviewing and presenting information. And I really don't like what's going on. I don't really like the Daily Wire anyway. I was really sad when Jordan Peterson joined the Daily Wire. But we're just being, a lot of things are being revealed, right? Not everybody is America first. Even though they act like they're America first, a lot are Israel first. And, you know, I'm America first. I don't think that we should be giving money to all these countries and all that, but the astonishing significance of red heifers in our day. May have heard the rumors about red heifers in Israel, hushed whispers of cattle kept in secret locations and clandestine sacrifices near the Temple Mount. Or perhaps you even saw the statement by Hamas a little while ago that it was these red heifers that precipitated Operation Al-Aqsa flood. That's right. Apparently the mere existence of some red cows in Israel triggered the October 7th massacre, according to a Hamas spokesman. The Middle East is a wild place, and this is about as mad as it gets. But when we take a closer look at the biblical origins of this whole heifer debacle, you'll see why it's all so significant enough to start a war. Now the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "This is the statute of the law that the Lord has commanded. Tell the people of Israel to bring you a red heifer without defect, in which there is no blemish, and which a yoke has never come." God's law given to the people of Israel at Mount Sinai included the requirement of perfect red heifers, no defects, no blemishes. For the unclean, they shall take some ashes of the burnt sin suffering, and fresh water will be added in a vessel. Okay. Let's see. As it says in ancient Jewish literature, the clean person shall sprinkle upon the unclean person, and he shall be clean at evening. He who sprinkles the water of sprinkling shall be unclean. All who are involved in the preparation of the heifer from beginning to end become impure, but the heifer itself purifies the impure. But God says, "I have made a decreed a decree, and you may not transgress my decrees." According to the Bible, the red heifer has to be burned outside the camp, as the priest is described in Numbers 19:7 as coming back into the camp with the ashes. So this perfect specimen had to be killed outside the camp, and its death brought atonement and life in the place of sin and death, breaking the curse of death. Sound familiar? The commentary elaborates to specify 3 camps. It must be outside the camp of the divine presence, outside the Levite camp, and just to be on the safe side, outside the Israelite camp as well. Due to this tradition, the red heifers could be sacrificed on the Mount of Olives, which is east of the the Temple Mount. It is important to note that the ashes of the red heifer can be gathered and kept without a time limit. There's no use by date for the ashes, so no rush to use them right away, but the cow must be perfect at the time of its slaughter. This led to the discussion in the Talmudic tract on the subject to raise about how long one would wait before slaughtering the cow. A red heifer might be flawless one day, but grow a stray, white, or dark hair overnight. So it's important to get it done before they become impure. Catching them at the right moment before imperfections develop is the critical issue. On Thursday afternoon, September 15th, 2022 at 5 p.m., 5 flawless red heifers arrived in Israel. They were originally spotted in Texas and were flown all the way from USA. The Temple Institute, dedicated to the restoration of the Jewish temple, reported a modest ceremony was held at the unloading bay of the cargo terminal at Ben Gurion Airport, where the new arrivals were greeted and speeches were made by the incredible people who put their heart and souls and means into making this historic prophetic day become a reality. What now? So now we have apocalyptic cows causing trouble left and right, religious Jewish enthusiasts eagerly planning the third temple, furious terrorist groups resorting to extreme violence in their determination to thwart any possibility of such a thing, and misguided Christians all over the world lending their support to one side or the other, and a whole library of prophetic literature in all 3 traditions about what happens next. It's hard to know how or when a third Jewish temple could appear on the Temple Mount, although there is enough room to build the temple up there without destroying anything. Do you think they'd do that? And what do you guys think about how are they going to actually get rid of all of these religions in order to bring about the one world religion? Is this how it's done? Time will tell how it pans out. One thing's for sure, the Temple Institute guys are ready and waiting, and the whole thing could be up and operational within months, once permission is granted. The only thing holding them back, really, apart from a place to build, was the absence of the red heifer ash, but that hurdle looks like it's going to be overcome in the very near future. The third temple will be built, but it will also be desecrated, according to Scripture. However, at the end of this age, the Messiah will come and take his rightful place on the Temple Mount, on the throne of David. Satan knows his time is short. He is violently opposed to this plan and is railing against it with all his might. But you cannot stop the Lord Almighty. Nothing can. So there you go. So maybe, is it satanic to try to stop these plans since it was written in the Bible? I mean, that's what this seems to indicate. Michelle says, rebuilding of the temple, I believe, is a physical building. Good Friday day, we acknowledge that sacrifice. Yeah, and that's probably why they would sacrifice the heifer today, in my opinion. They probably dyed their hair red. I mean, why not? If you genetically modified it, you created it, why not just dye the hair red? Nothing can. In the meantime, we who love the Lord need to be thinking about preparing ourselves and getting ready. What does that look like? We need to be getting rid of impurity in our lives and rededicating ourselves to Him. When we read the passage about the red heifer in context, we see it's immediately followed by the death of Miriam, and then water from the rock, and Moses' sin of hitting that rock instead of speaking to it. This context gives us a clue as to what it all means for us today. Rashi says the reason that death is juxtaposed with the red heifer is to teach you that just as sacrifices bring atonement, so the death of the righteous secure atonement. Our righteousness is put upon him, and his righteousness is imparted to us when we wash ourselves in that living water, the water for purification from the ashes of sacrifice. The clues are all there. Let's see. Harking back to the Passover, blood on the door frames, the scarlet thread of redemption which runs through the scriptures, the perfect sacrifice without defect or flaw, the red color of blood, the death of righteous which atones for sin, the priest made unclean, and the unclean who are made clean by virtue of the service, and the water of purification which gives life. Moses getting the water from the rock reminds us not only how much we need that living water for survival, but also that obedience to the Lord is vital. Our striving to do unsanctioned good works don't help. Just one word from him is enough. If he has declared us clean, then that is what we are. Thank him for his sacrifice that paid for your sin, and just believe he has done it. One day, maybe someday, we will be able to thank him face to face. So that's all I have. That is all the info for tonight. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me, and let me get this up. So yeah, thank you guys for hanging out. I was going to talk about Neuralink, but I decided to save that for another day because the articles I found are very long, and it's about neurological warfare. So now that they've started putting chips in people's brains and they can telepathically move video games and such, we have to worry about a new form of warfare, another battlefront, as it were, and that is straight to your mind, to your brain. So again, crazy time to be alive. I am thankful that I got to be here during this time, even though I know that trials and tribulations lie ahead for all of us. What can you do except for, hold your head up high, do what's right, tell the truth, love your neighbor, and try not to sacrifice your immortal soul for earthly pleasures. And that's all I got for you today. Thank you guys again. I don't know when I'll be able to do another video. For those of you, though, that are interested, actually, I'm getting a puppy tomorrow. I get my puppy. So I'm getting a Brittany. If you want to see, I'll show you a picture of him really quick. I'm super excited. again, my mother-in-law is not doing that well, and so I have to stay close to home, but I'm looking forward to training a puppy while I am, home. So let's see. Right here is the puppy. This is my boy, Green. I don't know yet what his name will be, although I think it might be Luke. For biblical purposes, but also Luke Skywalker, I'm not gonna lie. And my other dog's Leo, so Luke and Leo. But let's see, there he is. There's a better picture. So, picking him up tomorrow. I can't wait. Thank you. Parents, this is what mom and dad look like. Kind of can see him. But he'll be 40 pounds, which I think is a perfect size. I'm hoping to go kayaking and canoeing and do all the outdoor stuff with him, hiking. Weekday, chill pup. Yeah. They were all cute, but I think I got the best one. I am happy. Whoops. Share this tab instead. No, don't share that tab. All right, guys. Thank you again. I will see you. I'll let you know on YouTube. Please check out the community tab every now and again. Eventually, I hope to be doing a lot more videos, but in the meantime, while things are the way they are, I'll have to just sneak them in while I can. Take care of yourself, guys. Hopefully, this Easter weekend goes by smoothly and nothing pops off. Like, we already have enough going on with the bridge, and the economic ramifications of that are only just beginning. And so it's going to be a hell of a year, but learn who your neighbor is and learn to love them, because that's all we got in the end. Good night, guys. Have a good weekend. Take care.